If you had told me 6 months ago that my life would turn into this, I would have laughed. Not because it sounded impossible, but because it felt like the kind of story that only happens to someone else. I remember the exact second I realized something about her was different. It wasn't the first time I saw her. Not even the second. It was a Tuesday night in late October, and the gallery was nearly empty. Most people had already left once the wine ran out, but she stayed, standing in front of a painting that honestly looked like someone had spilled coffee on a canvas and called it art. And she didn't move. It was like nothing else in the room existed. I had gone to that gallery for all the wrong reasons. My colleague James talked me into it, said it would help my social life, then vanished with someone he recognized from conference. So there I was by myself, holding a glass of warm wine, wondering how quickly I could leave without looking rude. Then I saw her. She wasn't loud. She wasn't trying to get attention. She had short copper-red hair cut right at her jaw, sharp cheekbones, and this intense focus that made you feel like whatever she was looking at had to matter. Without thinking, I walked closer to the painting. Not because I cared about it. I stood next to her for a moment. She didn't look at me. I said something about the painting being hard to understand. She replied, without turning her head. Most things worth understanding usually are. I didn't know what to say to that, so I stayed quiet. And somehow, that silence turned into a conversation that lasted 2 hours. Her name was Isla. She told me not to Google her. She said it so casually, like it was a normal thing to say, that I almost missed how strange it sounded. But I didn't miss it. I just didn't ask about it. Not yet. We talked about the things strangers talk about when they're actually paying attention. Books, cities, that weird, empty feeling after finishing something you loved and not knowing what to do next. She was sharp, fun in a quiet way, and guarded but not cold. It felt more like she was choosing, in real time, how much of herself to give. When a gallery closed, she shook my hand. Formal, almost like a business deal. Then she walked out into the rain without looking back. I stood there on the sidewalk thinking about it longer than I should have. I didn't Google her that night. I'm not sure why. Maybe because she asked me not to. Maybe because I liked not knowing. There was something rare about meeting someone and letting them just be a person before they turned into a search result. We ran into each other again 4 days later. Total coincidence. I was at a small bookstore on the west side, the kind with creaky floors and a cat that basically owned the poetry section. I had been searching for a specific book for months, and there she was, standing at the same shelf, holding the exact book I came for. She looked at me. I looked at the book. Then she handed it to me without saying a word. I laughed and said, "This is either a coincidence or the universe is showing off." She almost smiled. Almost. "I already have a copy," she said. "It's good. Don't rush it." We ended up getting coffee next door, then walked along the waterfront for an hour, even though it was cold enough to see her breath. She felt different that day, more open. She asked about my work. I told her I taught literature at a small college, which she found both funny and interesting. She asked which authors I actually believed in, not just taught. She asked what makes a story last. I said honesty, the kind that's raw and a little uncomfortable. She went quiet for a second, then said, "That's either very brave or very naive." I shrugged. Probably both. That was the moment. Not big, not dramatic. No music, no sudden realization. Just a small, quiet shift where I felt like I was talking to someone real. Someone who challenged me. Someone who wasn't pretending to be easy or warm, but actually cared how I thought. Over the next few weeks, we kept seeing each other. Coffee, walks, one dinner we never officially called a date, but clearly was. She was consistent, which surprised me. Reliable in small ways. She showed up when she said she would. She remembered things I mentioned casually. She texted with purpose, not just out of habit. But there were things I couldn't explain. Whenever someone recognized her in public, it followed the same pattern. It started friendly. A smile. A greeting. Then something changed. Not in a big way. Just a small shift in their face, like they suddenly remembered something. And then they pulled back. Sometimes with an excuse, sometimes just with a different tone. And Isla would watch them leave with a carefully neutral expression that told me everything. She was used to it. Whatever it was, she had been through it before. I asked her about it once. We were sitting by the water, the light stretching gold across the surface, and I said it straight. Why do people always look at you like that? She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, because they find out who I am and decide it's too complicated. I waited for her to explain. She didn't. Not that night. But the way she said it, flat, practiced, just a little too steady, told me everything. She wasn't hiding it out of shame. She was hiding it because she already knew how people reacted, and she was tired of watching them walk away. I didn't push. I figured she'd tell me when she was ready. What I didn't expect was how it would feel when she finally did. 2 weeks later, she called me on a Wednesday night and asked if I could come over. Her voice was different, quieter, like she had already made a decision and was preparing for what came next. I said yes. I drove across the city in the rain, the windows fogging up, the radio playing something I wasn't even hearing. And somewhere during that drive, I had this strange feeling that whatever was waiting behind her door was going to ask something for me. I just didn't know what. Her apartment was on the 11th floor of a building that looked simple from the outside, but inside, it was something else. Not flashy, not loud wealth, more like the kind that doesn't need to prove anything. High ceilings, wide windows, turning the city into a living painting. Shelves filled with real books, worn from use. A single lamp casting a warm glow. It was quiet in that expensive kind of way. Like even the noise outside knew better than to come in. Isla stood by the window when I walked in, holding a glass of water she wasn't drinking. "Thanks for coming," she said. "Of course," I replied. We didn't sit right away. The air felt heavy, like it needed a second. Eventually, she moved to the couch, and I sat across from her. She set the glass down and looked at me with that familiar expression. Careful, measured, like she was thinking through something step by step in her head. Then she said, "I want to tell you something, but you have to let me finish before you respond." I nodded. She took a slow breath. Then she told me. Her full name was Isla Hargrove, as in the Hargrove Foundation. At first, that meant nothing to me. Then she explained. Her family had been quietly shaping land policy, conservation, and urban development across the Pacific Northwest for 3 generations. Not publicly, not through headlines or campaigns, but behind the scenes. Slow, strategic, invisible unless you knew where to look. She was the principal director, the only heir, and had been for 5 years, ever since her father stepped back because of his health. The money was massive, but the influence was even bigger. I listened. I didn't interrupt. She kept her eyes slightly away from mine, like saying it directly would make it harder. Her jaw was tight, not angry, just tense in a way that comes from repeating something you already know won't land well. Then she said the part that made everything click. Her family had a rule, a condition that had been in place for years, through marriages, through generations. And now, through her, anyone who wanted a serious relationship with her had to sign a legal agreement. Not a prenup, something earlier, stricter, a document that made one thing completely clear: the other person would have no claim, no access to her money, no inheritance, no shared assets, nothing that could ever be built from her name. She said it plainly, no apology, but no comfort either. Then she looked straight at me and said, "It's not about trust. It's about certainty. My family decided a long time ago that the only way to know someone's intentions is to remove every other reason they could have to stay." I let that sit. The rain outside got louder against the windows. The room suddenly felt smaller. She watched me closely, and in that moment I realized she had given this same speech before. Every person who left her life had probably sat exactly where I was sitting. So I asked, how many people walked away after hearing that? She didn't answer right away. Then she said, enough that I stopped counting. And the way she said it, there wasn't any anger in it. That's what made it hit harder. That was the part that stayed with me. The way she said it, calm, direct, like she had already accepted the outcome a long time ago. Maybe not fully accepted what it meant, but accepted that it was real. I didn't say anything right away. I wasn't scared of signing the agreement. Not really. I didn't have anything complicated tied to my life. No family money, no business deals. But that wasn't what mattered. What hit me was what she was really saying underneath all of it. She had been alone in this for a long time. Every time she let someone get close, she had to give them a reason to walk away first. And every time they did, I thought about the way she shook my hand that night at the gallery. The careful, controlled way she carried herself around people. The way she watched them leave without showing anything on her face. She had built her whole life around expecting people to disappear. And now I was sitting in her apartment at 11 o'clock on a Wednesday night because she had decided to try again. With me. I took a breath and said, "Can I ask you something?" She nodded. "Do you actually want me to sign it? Or are you just waiting to see what I'll do?" Something shifted in her expression. Small but real. "Both," she said. I let out a short breath, almost laughing. Not because it was funny, but because it was honest. Most people would have tried to soften it. Pretend it wasn't a test. She didn't. She just sat there with it, with me. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees, and looked straight at her. "Send it to me." She blinked. "Whenever it's ready," I added. "I'll read it. I'll sign it." She didn't respond right away. She just watched me, and I could see it, how hard it was for her to believe I meant it. Then, quietly, almost like she didn't want the words to be real, she said, "Everyone leaves after this. You should know that." I didn't look away. Then let me be the first one who doesn't. Everything went still. The rain kept hitting the windows. She looked at me like I had just said something she understood, but hadn't heard in a very long time. She didn't cry. She didn't move closer. She just sat there, hands folded in her lap, staring at me with something new behind her eyes. Something careful, like a door she had kept locked for years was slowly deciding if it could open. I didn't push. I just stayed. We talked for another hour after that. Nothing heavy. Her work. A trip she had been thinking about. A book she stopped reading halfway through. Normal things. But it didn't feel normal. Because it came right after something real. When I finally stood up to leave, she walked me to the door. "I'll send the agreement this week," she said. "Okay." She paused, studying me. "You might feel differently after you read it." "I might," I said, "but I don't think I will." She nodded once, and I left. Driving home through the rain, I wasn't thinking about the agreement. I kept hearing what she said. Everyone leaves. Not like a warning. Like something she had seen happen so many times, it had just become the truth. I want to change that. I just had to prove it. I signed the agreement on a Friday afternoon. No big moment. No drama. I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee that had already gone cold, read every page twice, and signed my name at the bottom. Then I scanned it and sent it back before I could second-guess myself. The pause before hitting send wasn't fear. It was the meaning behind it. Not legal. Personal. I was choosing to be there with no safety net. No backup plan. Just showing up and hoping it would be enough. People do that every day without thinking. But when it's written down, signed, witnessed, it feels different. More serious. More real. I hit send. 20 minutes later, she replied. 2 words. "Thank you." That was it. No excitement. No long message. Just 2 simple words, carrying everything she wasn't ready to say. I didn't ask for more. I was starting to understand her. She didn't show trust with words. She showed it by staying, by showing up, by not disappearing. The next week felt almost normal, which surprised me. We had dinner at a small Moroccan place she liked near the university district. We got into a debate about a novelist, whether he actually deserved his reputation or just got lucky at the right time. She won. She knew she won, but she didn't push it. Walking back to her car, she slipped her hand into mine like it was nothing. No comment. No hesitation. Just natural. And that's when it hit me. This was real. But normal never lasts. It never does. The first sign something was wrong came from a place I wasn't expecting. My department chair, Professor Aldrin, called me into his office on a Tuesday morning and closed the door behind me. That alone told me something wasn't right. He never closed the door. He sat down across from me, folded his hands, and said carefully, "I want to ask you something as a colleague, not as your supervisor." I waited. "Is it true you're seeing Isla Hargrove?" "Yes." He studied me for a moment, not judging, just concerned, like he could see something ahead that I couldn't. "People are talking," he said. "Not here exactly, but in certain circles. Her family has influence, and when something touches them, it spreads." I nodded. "I appreciate you telling me." He gave a small nod back. "Just be careful. Not because of her, but because of everything that comes with her. I left his office and stood in the hallway for a moment. The lights buzzed overhead. Students walked past like nothing had changed. But something had. Something quiet, like the air shifting before a storm. That night, I told Isla what he said. She didn't look surprised. She looked tired, like something she had been expecting had finally happened. It starts like that, she said. Small, then it grows. What do you mean? She picked up her phone and handed it to me. A message from her family's legal office. Short, formal. A journalist had asked about our relationship. They wanted a statement. I handed the phone back. This is what I meant, she said. When I said it gets complicated. You warned me. Warnings don't make it easier. She was right. Over the next 2 weeks, things slowly built. A post showed up on a local news blog. Vague but clear enough. It talked about a foundation director dating a college professor, hinting that maybe he had something to gain. No names. But it didn't matter. People figured it out. My phone started showing me things I never searched for. Posts from accounts I didn't know. Comments under articles about the Hardrow Foundation. People talking about a new relationship. Someone even posted a picture of us walking by the waterfront. Taken from far away. I never saw anyone. Neither did she. And for the first time, I felt it. That quiet, uncomfortable feeling. Like someone was always watching. Not following. Not threatening. Just observing. Judging. Deciding who we were without knowing anything real. That's when I understood why people left. Not because of the agreement. Not because of the money. But because of this. That slow feeling that your life isn't private anymore. That people are turning it into something else. One night, I drove to her place without calling. I didn't plan it. I just needed to be somewhere that felt real. She opened the door, looked at me, and didn't ask why I was there. She just stepped aside. Let me in. We sat on the floor with takeout between us, the city glowing behind the glass. She told me about her week. I told her about mine. We didn't bring up the blog post, the photo, or any of it. At one point, she said quietly, "You're still here." I looked at her. I told you I would be. She hesitated, then said, "People say things." She was picking at the edge of a napkin, not even looking at me. That's when it hit me. She wasn't being difficult. She was someone who had been disappointed enough times that she stopped trusting the space between what people say and what they actually do. I said, "Then don't listen to what I say. Just watch what I do." She went still. Then she looked up at me, and for the first time, I saw something different in her eyes. Not quite relief. Something softer. Something that looked like the very beginning of belief. We stayed there for hours, talking about nothing important, letting the city move outside the window without us noticing. But when I walked back to my car, I checked my phone, and everything changed. There was an email from an address I didn't recognize. No subject line, just 4 words in the message. You should read it. There was a file attached. I opened it. It was the agreement I had signed. Or at least it looked like it. But it wasn't the same version. Someone had added something. A clause. A clause that wasn't there before. And if it was real, if it was actually in the official version, it didn't just limit what I could take from her. It put everything I had at risk. I sat in my car for a long time. The engine was off. The street was quiet. People walked past without noticing me. Just a guy sitting in a parked car at midnight, staring at his phone like it had just told him something he couldn't process. I read the clause 3 times. Then again, it was written in that dense legal language, clear enough to hold up in court, but confusing enough to slow you down. But once you understood it, there was no confusion. If I ever used Isla's name, her family's name, or anything connected to the Hardrow Foundation for professional or financial gain, the agreement could flip. Everything I had, my savings, my career, even my apartment lease, could be challenged. Not protection, control. That's what it was. I drove home without calling her. I needed to think first. I've learned over time, when something really matters, you don't rush into the conversation. You make sure you're ready. I barely slept. By 6 o'clock in the morning, I was at my desk. I pulled out the original copy I printed before signing and compared it page by page with the one from the email. 40 minutes later, I had my answer. Page 22. That clause was not there before. Someone had added it after I signed. The question was who? And the harder question, did Isla know? I'll be honest about what went through my head. For about 20 minutes, I let myself believe the worst version. That she showed me one version and filed another. That everything, the trust, the connection, had been planned. That I had been handled. It was a dark 20 minutes. Then I remembered her face when she gave me that agreement. The tightness in her jaw. The steady voice that felt a little too controlled. The way she already seemed prepared for the outcome. That wasn't someone running a game. That was someone scared of being left again. I called her at 8. She picked up on the second ring. "I need to see you," I said. "Not tonight. Now." A pause. "What happened?" "I'll explain when I get there." I drove across the city in the gray morning light, focused in a way that only happens when you've made a decision, but don't know yet if it's the right one. The streets were quiet. The whole city felt still, like it was waiting. She was already at the door when I got there. She took one look at me and stepped aside. No questions. I showed her the email, then both versions of the document. I watched her face carefully. Confusion, then recognition, then something harder. She sat down, silent. Then finally, she said, "I didn't know about this." "I believe you," I said. She looked up at me, surprised. Just like that. Just like that. She shook her head slowly. "You should be angry." "I am," I said. "Just not at you." She stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the city was waking up, slow, gray, and completely unaware of what was happening inside that room. "It was my uncle," she said. "He handles the legal side of the foundation. He's done things like this before. Small changes. Adjustments. He thinks protecting the family means controlling everyone around it." I asked, "Am I just another risk to manage?" She turned around immediately. "Not to me." I held her gaze. She took a breath. "I can fix this. I can have the official version corrected and remove the clause. But it means confronting him directly, and that's going to open up a lot more than just this." "Then open it," I said. She looked at me like she was waiting for a condition. Like I was about to say, but there was no but. That afternoon, she made the call. I sat in her kitchen, drinking bad coffee, listening to only her side of the conversation. Her voice was calm, precise, confident in a way that made it clear she wasn't someone to underestimate. The call lasted 11 minutes. When she walked back in, something had changed. She looked lighter. Not happy exactly, but lighter, like she had finally put something down. "It's being corrected," she said. "Good." She sat across from me and looked at the table for a moment. Then she said, "I keep waiting for you to have a limit." "Everyone has limits," I said. "So what are yours?" I thought about it, then answered honestly. Dishonesty, disrespect, and someone who stops trying. I looked at her. "None of those are you." She stayed quiet for a second, then said, "I think I've been treating this like a test. I was always going to fail. Like I already knew how it ended, and I was just waiting for it to happen. And now." She looked at me, really looked at me. No guard this time. "Now, I think I might have been wrong." We stayed at that table for another 2 hours. Not talking about the agreement. Not about her uncle. Not about the media. Just talking. About her work. About my students. About what we actually wanted for the next few years. Things we hadn't said out loud before. It was the most honest conversation I'd ever had. Weeks passed. The agreement was fixed. Her uncle backed off. The blog posts faded. The photo disappeared under newer stories. And we just kept going. One night, standing in her kitchen while the rain fell softly outside, she leaned against the counter and said, "You know what's strange?" "What?" "I built my whole life expecting people to leave, and now I don't know what to do with someone who stays." I walked over to her, stood right in front of her. "You could try getting used to it." She looked up at me, and for the first time since I met her, there was no guard. "Maybe I will," she said softly. I kissed her then. Slow, certain. Outside, the rain kept falling. Inside, everything felt warm. And I thought back to that night at the gallery. The painting neither of us could explain. The woman standing alone. The almost smile. The moment she told me not to Google her. I thought about how close I came to leaving early that night. And I'm really glad I didn't. If you like this story, subscribe for more stories like this.